I got a makeshift bell, but I need to go pick up the other one, but we'll ring it in as best we can with a cowbell. So, well, welcome to the August 26th Rotary Club of Newport meeting via Zoom. We're in this break here for at least a month. We'll assess and see how how things look. We'll likely get a little input from Ursula and the folks at Samaritan Community Pacific Hospital. So we appreciate them and certainly have are going under caution here to do this. I know from personal recent events, my mother-in-law is in hospital and they've shut down in Corvallis, they've shut down visitors. So the hospitals are going to the same thing. So it's, they're really feeling the stress of that. So do we have a flag, and can we create a flag for the flag salute? There we go. And what we want to do during the Zoom meetings, we want to try and keep the greeters going. So today's greeter is Julie Hanrahan and Doretta Smith. So we would like to have that be part of the role or the greeter duty. So if either, I know Doretta's on there, I didn't see Julie, but Doretta, would you like to lead us in the flag salute?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Excellent. So I like that. So I think John may have done that or had something to do with muting everybody. So it just comes off a lot better. We have one person here say a really, very clear, very straightforward thing. So I like that. So thanks on that, Doretta. Make sure and wave to everybody. So that's could be the other part of the greeter duties is, maybe we do send a chat to each other, but let's give a big wave, a virtual wave, if you will. And if you have a profile picture up there, maybe pull it down for just a second. Let's see your beautiful, shining, smiling face and receive a wave there. So great job, Sylvia. Okay. Any guests other than the program today? Any guests on here?
I am a guest of Julie Hanrahan. I don't see her on here, but she sent me the link. So my name's Riley Johnson. I'm the financial advisor at CB Financial Services with the bank, or at Columbia Bank there. And I was on last week as well.
Yep, great, Riley. Well, glad to have you here.
Thanks.
And I also have a guest, Richard, Julia Dobies, and she is our Rotaract president and is soon to become a member.
Wonderful. Welcome, Julia. Any visiting Rotarians? Probably a little bit more difficult to have in Zoom unless they already knew or had gotten the invite from previously attending. So, well, welcome everybody, and we'll get things kicked off here. Let's see here. So I wanted to cover a couple of things. I know we had Sylvia was talking earlier about service projects, and we have Grace Winds that had been kind of our sponsor or showcase for service project, and donation stations are positioned around the town, and there are places to bring things and not to exclude cash. So if you feel philanthropic and want to do a cash donation, but also paper plates, coffee supplies, all those paper things and things that make it easy to help Tracy Flowers at Grace Winds facilitate and guard or help folks experiencing homelessness. That's a very, very good thing here in town. And she seems to be the main person other than Lola, where we have transitional folks there with Samaritan House with families experiencing homelessness. So again, there's a number of places in town, including Martech, Advantage Realty, Oregon Coast Bank. I know that there's one or two other places here that you can get those supplies there or cash. If any Rotarian would likely, if you're interacting with them, they could get the money to Mark or could get it to Sonia or to Jim Graham. I could get the money to Mark, and then we could get it on to Tracy. So good shout out there. She's going to go around to those places this next week, Tuesday or Wednesday, maybe Thursday. And if there had been any donations, collect them and then get them on to Tracy. So she'll probably give us a little recap next week of how that went. Sylvia also had led a nice cleanup project. So I was going to ask Sylvia to talk a little bit about that event last Saturday. So share a little bit, if you will, Sylvia, how that went.
Well, it went very well for the people who came and worked hard. I think John Zagel might have had some pictures, but we should have given him some warning before that. So Jim and Sonia Graham came, and Guy Faust came, and Kevin's last name escapes me right now. So let's see who else made it. John Zagel and his wife, and I ripped up blackberries, and the coordinator for the state parks, Anita, was there. So we were able to space out quite well. Little sad that the rose garden had been in the last week. Someone took the roses out of it. So now we have a memorial plaque for Rotarian and no roses there. So we'll be, well, Parks is trying to figure out what happened to the roses. We don't think there were rose nappers. We think more likely somebody thought, oh, these poor plants are just neglected. And to answer sort of a little trivia question, that rose garden says, this rose garden is planted in memory of Elliot Schneider, 1921 to 2010, a kind man, a gentleman, and most of all, a Rotarian. Except now it's overgrown with weeds and there are no roses. So I don't see that as a project that's one and done. We got to fix up that rose garden or move the plaque, one or the other.
Great report. Yeah, I was looking for that to hear who that name was, or that name that you'd mentioned, a little preview to that. So thanks for sharing that. Great project. Thank you folks for getting out there and doing that. I wasn't able to participate with conflict and also being still a little bit under the weather. I'm kind of glad we're in this Zoom, because again, the throat is not great, and the cough and all the things that are associated with that. Next, we want to invite Ursula. We've been doing a historical moment, historical minute. We can kind of figure out the catchphrase for that, but Diane has been coordinating folks to do that, and she's done a wonderful job. So she had invited Ursula to do a historical minute today. So go ahead and take the floor there, Ursula.
Okay, I think I'm going to take about 3 minutes, and we do have a little slide presentation that John Zagel is going to put up for us. So we are going to talk about Rotarians' responses to the 1918 flu pandemic. An estimated 500 million people, or 1/3 of the world's population, became infected with the 1918 flu. 50 million of those people died worldwide, and 675,000 of those deaths were Americans. Many cities closed theaters and cinemas and placed restrictions on public gatherings. Rotary clubs adjusted their activities while also, yeah, you can just hold it on that slide, John. Don't move until I tell you to.
Okay.
Rotary clubs adjusted their activities while also helping the sick. This is how Rotary responded to the influenza pandemic that began in 1918 and ended in mid-1920. Hospitals in some areas were so overloaded with flu patients that schools, private homes, and other buildings were converted into makeshift hospitals. And that first slide, that's what you were seeing. In Chicago, where Rotary World Headquarters was located, the number of new cases reached 1,200 a day. Just like now, clubs were inspired to act and adapt. They adjusted how they met, following guidelines of the time, and took action to provide services and support to local governments and healthcare workers. A lot of this activity took place in the United States because at that time, Rotary did not have much of an international presence. So this slide, what you're looking at, is Rotarians in Sacramento and Berkeley, California, held their meetings outside to comply with restrictions on enclosed meetings. Next slide. The Rotary Club of Kankakee, Illinois, helped raise funds to buy a car for a Red Cross social worker to use in her trips around the country during the pandemic. Next slide. More than 24 Rotarians in Charlotte, North Carolina, worked with members of the Boy Scouts to distribute flyers with guidance on how to prevent the spread of influenza. Since they did not have vaccines or antibiotics at the time, the advice of the day included tips on isolation, quarantines, good personal hygiene, disinfectants, limitations of public gatherings, and mask wearing, all of which were unevenly applied. Next slide. Rotarians in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, secured beds for emergency hospitals, volunteered as ambulance drivers, and assisted with a health survey of the city. The Rotary Club of Waterbury, Connecticut took similar steps, making a canvass of local flu cases and helping to create a hospital. Next slide. A Rotary flu squad in Great Falls, Montana fought the ravages of the epidemic, not by hiring people to do work for them, but by actually doing their own hands-on whatever work needed to be done, according to a 1919 Rotary magazine article. So that, my friend, is your Rotary moment in history.
Wonderful. I think that really sheds light on what we're going through. And I think I heard 15 million people died from that. Is that what you'd said earlier, Ursula? That's
Actually 50 million
5-0. Okay.
died worldwide, and 675,000 were Americans. So we're approaching that number with the COVID.
Yeah, well, it's scary. And hopefully,
What was the population of the United States at the time?
I don't know what the population of the United States was. It said that, and I could look that up, but it said that 500 million people, or 1/3 of the world's population, became infected. So the world's population was whatever that number is, 1,500,000,000.
Okay.
okay, nice report.
Did you have a question?
No, I was just going to make a comment. Two of my dad's brothers, before he was born, one died in the morning and one died in the afternoon of the flu. They were age 2 and 4 at the time.
That could be deal just like that with polio or other things, and obviously now COVID. We probably know somebody. We've all been touched by it. You know, you could say that safely with cancer. The same thing is that you know somebody that's been affected by it. Well, COVID now is that you know somebody that's been affected by it more so. So it's certainly something, and again, the measures we're taking here, I think, is very good to be cautious on that. A couple of things I want to talk about now. Is Bob on here? I don't see Bob Wienert for Sergeant at Arms. So I'm gonna share a couple of things, and I'll ask for a volunteer to kind of take his role for just a few minutes. But I just want to share just a couple of things here. Recently, or last week, our Rotary Club, Rotary International, had held a Facebook Live. Did anybody able to see that or view that? So they had Rotary International President Sheikh Armetta on there talking about and different things and bringing up quite a few you know, goals and topics. Particularly is his emphasis is to grow Rotary through membership increases. The theme is everyone bring one. So, you know, like on this meeting, it's relatively easy to invite somebody, to invite a guest, have somebody on and share Rotary, share what we do. And, you know, they may learn something, they may know somebody, they may get something out of it, because it truly is, you know, a way to participate in helping, you know, helping literacy or helping education or clean water or fight diseases. So it's something that little Newport can do, you know, around the world by connecting through Rotary. And it is something that we often forget. So I do like that. And one of his phrases was, "Service is the rent I pay for the space I occupy on this earth." So it is kind of interesting that he, you know, he thinks about, you know, what he does and how he does it to kind of give back. And that's oftentimes we forget about. You know, we may be more fortunate or may be in better off place, and projects that Sylvia has created or is creating, you know, that's one way to participate, or, you know, your Rotary dues or those things. So there's certainly some ways to help folks out. And again, it's, I think it's just doing good. If you want to bring it back to that, it's just the emphasis of doing good. One of the other things is he believes in diversity. And so particularly in the latest Rotary magazine, you'll see your fresh copy there, has a COVID mask on the cover, so you can't miss it. But he's talking about education and literacy, and shares that, you know, you'll live longer with being, you know, more educated or being literate. talks about how 14% of the adults in the world are lacking, writing and reading, just basic skills. And just think about new mothers or young daughters, young girls, and how they, things they have to go through, or, things that could be better if they would understand or have education or those things. So it's certainly, one of the most, one of the greatest goals we could have is to help education, literacy, and obviously that's where we came up with the Literacy Park, and that was the service project. So good on Sylvia for creating that and shifting from Mabetsu to that. I think it needed a little bit more work, and then we'll try to, maybe she can keep track and find those roses, see maybe somebody adopted them or fostering them, and maybe they'll bring them back when they're just glorious and blooming. That would be a nice thing to see. Okay, any volunteers for Sergeant at Arms duties? Anybody want to step up to the plate and ask that? No takers. Okay, well, how about we'll just call out happy bucks. Anybody want to brag or any happy bucks this last week? Anything that was really good? Yeah, Megan.
I want to say that Saturday we got, or not Saturday, excuse me, Tuesday we got 30 more people, with 25 of them being first doses at the Oregon Coast Community College vaccination clinic. There's another vaccination clinic today in Lincoln City, tomorrow at Local Ocean, Saturday in Lincoln City at the community center, and Saturday also at the Shred Day at the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office parking lot in the back. So I'm $30 happy because we got 30 more people. So that's my happy bucks and my information to share. So
thank you for that effort. That's wonderful. And you must have put in hundreds of hours, working the stations and doing that. So thank you for that. And it's just wonderful.
And I got to see one of our I worked with our past exchange student, Riley. She was there helping as well, helping check in people. So that was really nice. I told her I would mention that to all of you today.
Wonderful. Good to hear that. Next up, I see Amy's hand, I think was next.
Yeah, I just would like to donate to my Paul Harris $25. I don't know if you guys all know, but Thompson Sanitary had a trailer fire on Sunday morning, and we lost the trailer, but I'd like to $25 in honor of the Newport Fire Department because of their quick response and the way that they handled the fire. They salvaged our building, and so that it had minimal damage. So I'd like to recognize them.
I think Diane, you had your hand up there.
Yes, I want to contribute to my Paul Harris today. I am happy that we are going to get the Rotaract Club, send all the paperwork in by August 30th. I'm eternally grateful to Julia for stepping up to the plate to be our first year Rotaract president. We have a secretary and a treasurer, and it's slow, but we're moving along, and I'm really, really happy about that. And when she becomes a member, I want to contribute to her Paul Harris because I'm so grateful. I'm also grateful for getting my class ready to go and just having everybody step up to the plate to do what they need to do in this club. You all are wonderful people. And I also have an announcement, Richard. I want to make sure everybody knows September 9th, we are not having the picnic. It was canceled. So we'll have a regular Rotary meeting. And again, Mary Kay Dahlgreen has stepped up to the plate, and she is going to give a presentation that day. She'll be our guest speaker, member guest speaker. Thanks,
Wonderful.
Richard.
Thank you. Any others? I know a few other hands. There we go. No, Spencer.
Since if our Sergeant at Arms were here today, I would probably be paying a large fine because I haven't been present at a lot of Rotary meetings. So in self-reporting, I'll kick in $100 for my Paul Harris fellow, and it's good to be back. So thanks.
Wonderful. We'll share that with them. So good on
Yeah, please let them know.
Of course. Okay, any others? Last call there. Oh, Freddie.
Yeah, well, I'm not happy we're not meeting in person, but I'm happy we're meeting virtually. So it's the next best thing. Still good to see everybody on here. And I realize that I'm saving $30 for lunch today, so I will put that towards her Paul Harris.
Good way to do that. Okay, any other hands? I'm flipping back on screens here to see if I see anybody. Doretta's saying something.
Julie's trying to get your attention.
Oh, Julie, okay.
Trivia. I guess you wouldn't call it trivia, but I'm $10 happy because this is kind of a fun thing. This week, my son got to interview Jay Leno about he's starting a new show, and the station's going to carry it, so we got to interview. It hasn't aired yet, so he's going to want to know when this airs. So I'm $10.
Hey, Julie, we can't hear you.
Julie, you sound
Your
like you've
sound
been
is not
stuck in
good.
helium.
Your
gonna
sound's
say
not good,
helium.
Julie.
We heard $10. Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, any others?
Hey, but they're not happy bucks, they're depression bucks. And so I will contribute 60 to my Paul Harris because I turned 60 on Saturday.
All
And
right.
if any of
yeah.
you who already have a 6 in front of your number say welcome to the club, shut up.
That's right. Any other birthdays? I forgot to ask that. So good on you.
I've got one happy buck.
Go ahead, Mark.
Okay. As usual, I was out of town this last weekend for the work party. So I'd like to put $25 towards Sylvia's Paul Harris for all the work she's done on it.
Wonderful. I'll match that too. I think that's a great thing. So good on you. And anybody else want to do that? I think that's a great effort. It keeps her encouraged and keeps the programs going. Okay, I want to kind of read a couple of things here I thought about here lately. So we're going to have a nice program here. So we welcome programs like today's. We hope that they inform our membership. We want to protect our members from political bias and try to create a fair and balanced presentation. When it comes to things like ballot measures and taxes, it's a hot topic, and we understand that. So we hope and know that these individuals are fine gentlemen, scholars. They're gonna give us a good presentation without a bias or without a personal opinion and just the facts. And we hope that it's basically like a manager's report, and we expect that, and we know that that's what we're hoping for. We know that there's going to be feelings about this, and it's going to go through the next several weeks and hear more about it, and we may talk about, if we need to have, would be the other side, to have a presentation maybe from the restaurateurs or some of the folks that would potentially be implementing or levying those taxes on their bill. So that's a possibility, but we don't want to go there if we don't have to. We're always asking ourselves how it will be delivered, how it will be received, the topic of taxes, and anytime they have a fee, we visit down in Yachats, and I know they've got it, and you always question it, you always go, and then there's a conversation and it's awkward. So again, I don't want to express my personal opinion, but we've asked the Dean Sawyer and Spencer Nebel to give us a report. Again, we trust that that's what you'll hear today is a report and not a personal opinion, and we certainly aren't looking to show favoritism or to show bias against or for, and we know that you're passionate about these things. So again, we hope that that's what we'll receive, and that's what you'll hear. And if you have questions, go easy on them if you're one way or the other, or throw it in the chat, and maybe we can address them that way. But I think they're prepared to have some time for questions and answers. Spencer Nebel, you know him, he's one of our Rotarians, one of our own. He's been our city manager here in Newport since December of 2013. He came to us with many years of the same experience. Spencer is tasked with going to all the city council meetings, unless he's excused by the mayor of city council for particular issues. He focuses on recommendations and suggestions for the city and prepares and administers their city budget. He also encourages and supports regional and intergovernmental cooperation, among other things. So hard job, does a good job, and we support that. So thank you on all that you've done for us, Spencer. Dean, of course, our Newport City Mayor, was elected for a second term. Our mayor works with the city council and the city manager to make recommendations for the needs of the city to help with the budget balancing. Dean's been a Newport resident. I'll say forever. I don't know the actual history, but I know it's decades. And then he also shares lots of things on Facebook, which I think is great, and hits the topics, hits the things that are going on, and then lots of pictures about his grandson Huxley. So we keep them coming, Dean. So we like that. Okay, so I'm ready to let you guys talk. I don't know who's going first, but you have the floor.
I'll start out with a few comments and I'll grab Peggy after. We'll let Dean get started with a few things too. But no, thank you very much for allowing us to present information regarding the upcoming issues that have been referred to the voters of Newport regarding the proposed gas tax and the prepared food tax ballot measures. And we're going to cover kind of the evolution of this discussion and how we got to this particular point. And at this point, I will turn it over to Dean. And Dean, if you get started, we'll get the PowerPoints up in just a second. So.
Okay, you want me to go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead, Dean.
Okay, thank you, Richard, and for the rest of the Rotary, we really appreciate the opportunity today. And I do, as someone else earlier said, it's too bad we can't. Freddie said, too bad we can't meet in person today. I want to. There's a couple points that I want to make here real quick. Is number one, the council and the budget committee and the audit committee has been working on this issue for 3 years. This is not something that we just came up with last week. So it's been an ongoing thing. We've been trying to find a way to have the tourists pay more of their fair share to the city. Unfortunately, under state law, there's only a couple ways we can do that. One is the room tax, which we just did raise or will raise in September to 12%. The problem with the room tax is we only get 30% of that we can use for city purposes like road repair, trash pickup, weed abatement, whatever. The majority of that money has to go back into the tourism fund. So we really can't get a lot there. And there really is no other really way to tax tourists. We can't put a roadblock at the end of town and charge people $200 for coming into town. And so we unfortunately we're very limited by state law on what we can and cannot do. We're here today to discuss with you the proposed 5-cent per gallon gas tax and prepared food tax, which have been referred to the November ballot. And I want to make everybody aware that the city council could have done the prepared food tax without voter approval, but we felt that it was important that the people in Newport have their say. Both of the product of the detailed process that included a city finance work group who analyzed the city's budget situation and presented some proposed solutions. Unfortunately, those solutions, as I said, are very limited for tourists. One of the things that we did talk about was an increase in the water bills, as Albany did recently for their public safety to add police and fire. We decided we didn't want to do that because only people in Newport pay for that. We want to expand it to the tourists. So next slide, please. Oh, I'm sorry, the same slide. The city of Newport provides numerous services for city residents and visitors who work and visit here. Those include public safety, which is police, firefighters, emergency medical technicians, in addition to community development, street maintenance, water, wastewater utilities, and other services. So next slide. Okay. The city has parks, a library, and facilities for performing arts, visual arts, and other amenities. The city has a 60+ center for our more experienced residents to be able to congregate and socialize. The city provides those amenities year-round for residences, but also visitors use these services as well. They come here for the great weather, the ocean, recreational opportunities that the city has to offer. Did you know the city is supported by tax dollars of just 10,000 people when the city supports over 30,000 people on any given day? Spencer? Spencer? Did he leave?
I don't see him.
He's there. He held up a
There
we
He's
go.
muted.
finger
He's
there.
muted. You're still muted.
Upper right corner, Spencer.
Hold your space bar on your computer keyboard.
You're still muted.
Should be on the upper
Okay,
corner.
how's that?
Good.
Okay, sorry about that. The city budget is about $89 million in this current year, and it fluctuates back and forth depending on projects and other things that are going on in each year. It should be noted that most of these funds are with non-discretionary funds, meaning we collect funds for specific purposes. For example, our water and wastewater funds go specifically to support our water and wastewater infrastructure. Same thing with gas taxes supporting roads. Some of the monies we get from the state and federal government are earmarked for very specific projects. And so the discretionary part of the budget is in the general fund, which is about $16 million a year. Now, the general fund is what funds things such as police, fire, the library, general government, and also the general fund provides supplement funds to Parks and Recreation, because again, that's not a self-supporting operation. It provides funding to operate all our public restrooms throughout the community, and provides, again, those funds that are not tied to a specific function for the community. As the mayor indicated, we have a year-round population of about 10,000 people, and our 10,000 residents are supporting at times a population of 30,000 people during the summer months, and that certainly has a big impact on our services and the infrastructure we need in this community, because again, we aren't a residential subdivision community that needs to support 10,000 residents. We're really supporting 30,000 residents, particularly during the summer months. During the course of time, we've spent efforts in trying to project where we're heading with our revenues, where we're heading with our expenditures, and taking a look at things that we have not been able to fund in past years. And as a result, we've determined that there's a structural deficit that exists within the city. And this is something, again, that we are started to take a much closer look at to determine how do we provide a financial stability for the community to assure that we're going to have sufficient funds to provide the services that we provide. And from the standpoint of taking a look at meeting the needs that we have in many of our facilities in particular that are largely supported by the general fund. So we've got over 50 facilities that are maintained by the city. And so one of the efforts that the city council put into place starting 3 years ago was the implementation of a finance work group to really take a look at developing a financial sustainability plan. The plan that was adopted outlines a number of suggestions. First of all, we went through a significant number of cuts. We cut out 22 FTEs in the budget not for the current year, but for the previous year. And we cut out many other expenses. We saved about $1 million in long-term operational expenses, but we actually cut over $2 million from the general fund budget, preparing for the COVID year that we knew was going to impact our operations. The 5-year plan took a look at options such as increasing the tourist lodging tax, and that was passed by the council earlier this year. And the plan proposed by the finance work group also took a look at increasing the gas tax, the local gas tax to 5 cents, and also proposed a 5% prepared food tax on the food that you would purchase in restaurants and other locations. So those were some of the key expense and revenue recommendations that came out of that group. Turn it over to the mayor.
Okay, the council chose to pass the lodging tax increase by council vote, but decided to refer the proposed gas and prepared food taxes to the voters. Both of these measures will be on the November 2021 ballot. If the proposed tax measure passes, the city council wanted to give the vendors enough time to prepare and implement the required collection mechanisms. If the measure does not pass, the city would have additional time to evaluate and come up with alternatives. Next slide. If the gas tax measure passes, the proposed gas tax increase would yield an estimated $392,000 for street repairs within the city. The gas tax would be used for road maintenance, resurfacing, and road construction only. The prepared food tax would raise an estimated $2.5 million for the general fund each year. The funding would fund several items if the measure passes. If the proposed measure passes, about $200,000 in the first year would go toward one-time grants to help prepared food vendors cover costs to adjust their systems and prepare for the role in collecting the tax. If passed in the first year and the years after, the tax would fund 3 positions that we had to cut on the police department. We would add 3 firefighters and EMTs, a bilingual librarian. We would restore the parking enforcement officer, some city operating expenses and maintenance for city facilities. I know that a lot of people have homes and stuff, and we all have maintenance on our homes. The city recently spent $250,000 on the HVAC system for the Performing Arts Center. We spent $120,000 for the new library roof and $125,000 for the windows on the library. These are ongoing expenses that the city has to incur. Maintenance is the single biggest item in the budget associated with the proposed ballot measure. If the proposed prepared food tax ballot measure passes, $1 million of the annual funding would be used to upgrade the city's facilities. The city has 48 facilities valued at a total of more than $50 million. If passed, the revenue would be used to replace roofs and windows on some of those facilities, such as the Performing Arts Center and the Visual Arts Center. As you know, they're down there by the beach, and our great coastal weather just beats everything up. And provide other upgrades and maintenance to other buildings and parks that the city operates. Next slide, please. You may be wondering how the city arrived at a prepared food tax as an option. It was an item that the finance group, which are citizens from our community, they're all volunteers. It's the audit committee, the budget committee, and the city council came up with the idea, and it was researched heavily as its members considered alternatives. As I said earlier, we're very limited on how we can tax the tourists. Prepared food tax have been adopted in other Oregon cities, such as Ashland, which passed a similar measure in 1993, and the city of Yachats did it in 2007, or 2007, excuse me. Ashland is really, we looked at Ashland because they're really a similar city to us. They do have tourists, but they also have a lot of other folks that live there. And we've talked to the people in Ashland, and they say that it has worked wonderful. They don't have they rarely have a complaint from tourists about the tax. They don't have any complaints from the restaurant. Everything works fine. Recently, I was in Idaho 2 weeks ago, went out to a restaurant. At the bottom of my bill, it said 9% sales tax. So I think that virtually every other state in the country has tax on prepared foods. And it's just something that we need to do locally. And the council realized that there would be a burden on the locals as well as the tourists. But I think we also have to envision what we want our city to be like. What kind of quality of life do we want in Newport? Do we want nice roads? Do we want nice facilities? I think that if you look at other facilities and other communities size of 10,000, we have a lot better facilities here that they don't have. The Performing Arts Center, the Aquatic Center, and other facilities that the city has to fund. Both the Ashland and Yachats rely heavily on tourism and haven't seen any evidence that their tourist industry has been impacted in that time that the taxes have been in effect. If it does not pass, the council will have to make a decision on how to either find other alternative taxing measures, such as, like I said, Albany early, then that would be put on the water bill, or we would have to make cuts to our budget. And as you know, as Spencer has already said, we've already cut 2.5 million 2 years ago and $1 million this year. And it looks bleak coming forward in the next 2 years. And to make those cuts, what that means to you and I is it's less city services for us, less road problems, more weeds, more quality of life issues in our community. And again, my big question to all of us is, what kind of quality of life do we want for us in Newport?
If the measure passes, what food items would be taxed? This would include foods that are prepared for consumption, such as hot food, sandwiches, salads, fountain beverages, and other prepared items. If passed, bread and baked goods that you purchase in a store would not be taxed. Neither would the prepared food served in residential facilities, hospitals, schools, bed and breakfast establishments, or vending machines. It also wouldn't be collected from nonprofit organizations. If passed, there would be a 5-year limitation to this proposal, meaning that after once we reach that point, it would have to go back to the voters if it were going to be continued, or it could be dropped at that particular point in time. If passed, the tax would be charged to consumers, not the restaurants. The taxes would not come out of their operating expenses or profits. If passed, consumers would see the tax charged by the city on their tickets for their meals as a separate line item. Prepared food vendors would then be asked to remit taxes that they would collect to the city. The city would then provide the funding also to help restaurants implement these processes in the first year if the measure passes. Again, what would happen if this doesn't pass, and the mayor touched on this a little bit, the finance work group took a look at a number of other recommendations in dealing with expenses and revenues. And as the mayor indicated, we would either have to reduce operating expenses further so that we have funding in order to reinvest in our facilities. We might have to look at divesting ourselves of some of the facilities, or we can take a look at other revenue options, such as, again, many cities have implemented public safety fees on water bills, or take a look at a tax initiative that would come before the voters to specifically make improvements to these facilities. These are a number of the items that were talked about during the finance work group, and they're all certainly valid options. But again, the finance work group was really focused on taking a look at sources that would allow sharing of this expense with the 20,000 folks that come into this community every day, particularly during the summer months, to help support the infrastructure that's much larger than we would have if we didn't have that influx of folks in the community. So again, these are all difficult decisions, and nobody wants to propose taxes, but from an overall community viability standpoint and a long-term picture, I think it's again something that we have to look at, because the most important thing is really providing the quality of life that the people in the community want, and they'll have an opportunity to address one financing measure for that coming up in November. And secondly, we need to keep the city financially solvent as well. So those are the kind of the balancing act that we're dealing with. And at this point, we'd be glad to take any questions from folks.
Go ahead and unmute yourself if you have a question, or if you want it in the chat and somebody else to read it, that's fine too.
I have a question. So has there been any consideration given to privatizing some of the facilities and taking the burden of running those off of the taxpayers, i.e. the Performing Arts Center?
Yeah, well, actually, the Performing Arts Center is, in a sense, privatized. It's operated by the Oregon Council, Coast Council for the Arts. We do not operate that as a city facility, but we do have to pay for them to operate that facility. They generate revenues that help offset a portion of the expenses. But as you know, for both the Visual Arts Center and the Performing Arts Center, those are not operated directly by the city, but we do subsidize those operations.
So Dean had mentioned the need for repairing those two buildings, and so if we're not responsible for them, then why is that an issue?
We are responsible for them. we're hiring, we have a contract with OCCA to manage those facilities for the city. And so from that standpoint, they are city facilities, and we also have to make the major investments in those facilities from time to time as is necessary.
So I guess the next step on that question is what about taking it a step further? And why is the ownership of the buildings not privatized? Why is it a city responsibility? And has there been any thought to, like, the aquatic center, for instance, being sold to a private company and managed by a private company?
I think the one issue why cities get into certain things that we would otherwise be very happy to get out of is because it's not financially feasible to support that on a private basis. So again, there's very few private aquatic centers that can support themselves. There's very few performing arts centers such as we have that can support themselves. If we want those in Newport, I believe that there's going to require some sort of public support for those kinds of facilities. So if you can find someone to buy that, put them in touch with me, because we would certainly consider any offers. So.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we sold the Performing Arts Center or we sold the Visual Arts Center, then whoever buys the building can tear it down and put a 6-story hotel there. We don't have a Performing Arts Center.
Necessarily. You can make a covenant on the deed that they can't do that.
I would just like to say, when I first got on council in 2010, Mayor Mark McConnell was exploring taking the management of the aquatic center, or the pool at the time, and the rec center, and privatizing that. One of the options that was brought forward was having the YMCA run it. Unfortunately, if you recall, the YMCA did have a building here in town, but at the time they had left, and there was really no there was really no staff here from the Y that was left. Anyway, the mayor at the time had a blue ribbon committee that he put together, and they went all over the state and looked around at rec centers around the state. And the one thing that they found is that there was only one other rec center in the state that was run by the Y, and that's in Sherwood. And they also found that the city heavily subsidized their rec center up there. The other thing that they found was that we have the best rec center in the state for the size of town that we are. And I think that's part of the problem that we have with some of our facilities is, years ago when we put these facilities together, most of them were funded by urban renewal funds without long-term maintenance on it, which urban renewal funds cannot fund. They can only fund the actual building. And I think the problem was we probably overbuilt for the size of our community. And but we do enjoy the performances at the Performing Arts Center now, and we also enjoy the rec center and the aquatic center. But again, back in 2010, Mayor McConnell found that we do have these facilities that are greater than a community our size of 10,000.
Any other question for the mayor or the city manager?
I'll be a pest and ask another one.
Go ahead.
As a local realtor, I spend a lot of time on property tax assessors pages, and I see that there are a lot of properties that are owned by the city of Newport. I don't know what the purpose of holding all those are, but this is a height of a boom, and I'm just wondering if there's been given any thought to selling off some of those properties.
Yes, a few years ago, the city council got a list of all our properties, and we decided to try to market them. We found we had 4 properties that were buildable, and at the time they were donated to Habitat for Humanity. Unfortunately, Habitat has only been able to build 1 duplex, but they do have the option on those other properties to build 3 or 4 other houses. The other properties that we found were either substandard or unbuildable at the time. So we did want to market them, and we found that they weren't. But I think that that's not a bad idea. I think that we can bring that back up. Unfortunately, the majority of properties we get are, they're substandard, they're not 50 by 100 lots because people don't want them, and then we ultimately get them. The majority of properties that go for tax, for people that don't pay their taxes, go to the county, not to the city. So we don't get a lot of those properties. But but I think that would be a good thing to bring back up. I think we did that about 5 years ago. We went through our inventory of properties, and we did find that the majority of them were not marketable. And at the time, we did talk to a realtor to see if they were marketable or not, and we were basically told no.
So
Yeah,
with the new, yeah,
just
go
a
ahead.
little further on that too, Doretta. The city owns quite a bit of property, but over the years, the city acquired many of the drainage ways, the ravines that provide storm drainage for the city, and that was something. And again, if you ever talk to Don Davis about this, he will say never ever sell that property because it's a lot cheaper to maintain a natural ravine for storm drainage than to have that filled, have a storm sewer put in, and then have the responsibilities of maintaining the storm sewers forever. So a lot of the properties we own are properties that were either acquired for drainage issues. We've gotten a few properties that we got to the county over the years. But when you look at the inventory of properties that we have, there are not many prime marketable properties. But as the mayor said, that's something we can take another gander at. And if I'd certainly welcome any thoughts you have on any specific parcels you're aware of as well. So.
Well, I don't know your inventory, you'd know better than I do, but I know that the legislature has changed the laws recently on what you can build on a residential lot and to accommodate some of these smaller, less than 50 by 100 lots. Right. And because we are a town of 10,000 greater, that applies to us. So I would encourage the council to go back and take a look at maybe selling off some of those residential lots that maybe weren't buildable a few years ago, but under current law are.
It'd be worth another look to see if any of those are in that capacity. So,
Spencer, to add to Doretta's comment, what about the Abbey Street Pier? I'm always curious about that. Why I don't know how the city ended up with that ownership to begin with, but
yeah, my philosophy is anything that we own on pilings, we should get out from underneath. The Abbey Street Pier building is one of those buildings. We did sell the seafood processing plant a few years ago, and we do have that scheduled to potentially put on the market going forward. We would have done it earlier until COVID hit, but no, I think that's a prime facility that there's really no interest in the city maintaining that as a city facility, and we would like to get that into private hands. And as soon as the economic conditions for commercial property are a little stronger, I think you'll see that go up on the market. With all our leases there, we've shortened those lease periods when we renewed them to allow us to be able to market that building going forward. So if anyone wants to buy that building, please let me know. We'd be glad to put it into private hands fairly quickly. So.
I can reach out to Capri Architecture and see if they might be interested in purchasing that property.
All right, gentlemen, well, we thank you. And I think that was a good presentation and give us the facts. And obviously we can see that there's some passion about what to do and those kinds of things. So yeah, great job there. A big part of what we do as Rotary is we are fighting polio. There's 2 countries left, Afghanistan and Pakistan, and that have wild polio cases. So in your names, each of you, we're going to vaccinate 50 children against polio. So that's something that we're passionate about. So we'll be doing that and be coming up. I wanted to mention too, Julie had said, as part of her helium rant, was that her son had interviewed Jay Leno. So she was particularly happy about that and proud of that. So quite a deal. And if you didn't hear that in there, she sent a chat, but he had interviewed Jay Leno. So he's arrived. So it's a good job. So she was $10 happy for that. I also want to remind, we've got Peggy is going to be helping with the outreach program. If anybody else, and particularly where we're going to be back on Zoom, there's going to be some folks that may need to get a little card. I've got some more stock cards that Diana bought, so we've got those. But if anybody is interested to write a little personal card to a member that you don't see here today. So there's 38 folks, 37 folks here on the Zoom. Think about those people, and I can think of a couple right off, but a card's a nice thing to write, it's a little personal touch on that. So see me or see Peggy or send us a message and we'll help get you that. I do have, or would like to see if the board members here on the Zoom today can hang on for a minute. I've got one thing I want to bring up as kind of a sit down Zoom board meeting just real quickly afterwards. So I'd like to see if we can do that. Okay, how about secretary's report? Who's doing the secretary report for us today?
Jim, this is Jim here, and we have 30 out of 54 members for 54% organic, and 35 out of 56, including makeups, at 62.5%. So good to see so many people, even though I don't trust my camera, and I hope I don't smell like or don't sound like helium right now. So member incentive goes to Guy Faust. That'll be $5 to Guy. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sonia for the 50-50.
And again, real quickly, I put in the chat, but I've got a couple of these bumper stickers. So if anybody's looking to make sure and share boast that you're Rotarian, I'd love it. I've got a half a dozen of these. So I'm gonna give one of those away today on your drawing, and then a nice emblem that has a little sticky. You can go on your car or the laptop, whatever, but it's it's got some heft to it. So 3 drawings there. So Sonia, if you're able to facilitate that, great. If not, we can manage it another way. So go ahead, Sylvia, or Sonia, sorry.
Yes, I can absolutely facilitate that. I like to start with the grand prize drawing though, which would be the 50-50, so that so people put in their money don't lose their chance at the 50-50 first. So we had $95, which means that the winner of the 50-50 will win $47.50. And let's take a look and see who that winner is going to be. Oh, Carol Franzen. Okay, so Carol, I'm going to remove you there, and we're going to do the sticker next. Mark Miranda. Okay, and the emblem. Diane Nelson.
All right. How about social media award? Any likes, shares, and comments there, John?
Sorry about that. My cat's playing with this. Anyway, this week's winner is Ken Riley. And I also want to mention, hey, I have the website updated now. So the calendar's updated until July. And also Sonia's Coastbusters website has a link on there. We are supporting that. That's on there. And now there's also a comment, like after we have a meeting, there's going to be a comment section under every meeting, so you can say some positive things about my hair or Bob's hair or whatever you want. So now there's a comment section on everything. So everything's updated, and especially now that we're going back to Zoom.
Wonderful. Thanks, John. I sure appreciate that. Part of the, like I mentioned earlier, if you were on early, the greeters, so John's going to maintain that, and so there was a greeter sign up that went around. So we want you to participate in that. It's part of the red badge duties anyway, but it's just good show if you're doing it in a veteran Rotarian. But part of the greeter duties during Zoom, likely we'll have the 2 folks, one do the 5-way test, one do the flag salute, or some kind of a chat. So we want to kind of build some extra thing there to kind of keep them folks doing that. So we had Julie and Doretta. Doretta did the flag salute. Julie, did you get your voice back? Can we hear you?
No. Same.
Okay. Well, Doretta, would you mind taking us out with a 5-way test?
Yeah, but I feel like I need to suck some helium so I can compete. The 4-way test of the things we think, say, or do. 1, is it the truth?
The truth.
2, is it fair?
Fair to all concerned.
3, will
it build goodwill
build
and better friendships?
4, will
Will
it be beneficial to all concerned? And 5, is it fun?
All right, see everybody next week. Thank you. Good meeting, and appreciate everybody for you. And take care. Send a card if you can, do an outreach, and we'll talk to you the next time. I know.